Alright everybody, welcome to an episode of No Coffee with Khaldor, because as it turns out, we tried to record the opening of this video now for the third time, and the coffee that I had is already empty. I'm not gonna get a new one. We just came back from the Eastern Clash. We just crowned Genji the champion, so we're still a little bit suited up here, and I have Tetcher with me today. We're gonna talk about his origins, how he became a caster in the first place, and what led him to the Eastern Clash. So Tetcher, without further ado, let's talk a little bit about how you got here. How did you end up in esports, and what made you aim for being a caster and make this your like a full-time job?
Hi, so this is the first time I've been telling this story within the last couple minutes.
I am really interested, like especially tell me a little bit about, what was it, 6th grade? No.
Sixth form, basically like lower level college in the UK. I studied PE, history, PE physical education, history, psychology and drama, and I failed all of them except for drama, which I passed, but I had to study at least 2 subjects to keep studying there, so I had half a degree in drama and was kicked out. So, a little bit rough. I'm not the most academic of people, really. I'm not very good at that. So I had the feeling of, okay, I guess I'm only good at drama, so I guess I'm going to become an actor and never have a job, because getting a job as an actor is terrible. So I just decided to go to a drama school when the schools opened again, because at this point the school has already started, and I didn't want to join something late. So I took a year off, doing nothing except playing video games, and I was just playing on console at that point. I had a PC, but it wasn't great, and basically was watching through videos, and I saw a video by Total Biscuit. Was watching him play some game, don't remember what it was, but I remember at the end of the video he said, "And if you like my stuff, then be sure to check out my Starcraft 2 channel." And I was like, what is Starcraft? So went to the video, and it was a casting of the Iron Squid back in the day. Very quite an old StarCraft tournament, and I believe it was him and Apollo back in the day. And I watched this, and I was like, wait, this can be a thing? You can commentate video games? I like this game. I could do that. So I went out and bought a copy of StarCraft, played it for about 6 days, and then searched online for tournaments, found one called the ESL UK Open, messaged the person who was casting it and was like, hey, can I cast with you? I'm that guy. And for those who don't know, we as casters, we get this a lot, where people will ask to cast with us without any kind of show reel or any kind of example, no experience at all. And for some reason, this guy said yes. And I, unsurprisingly, after 6 days worth of casting, was terrible. So I went away and played for like several more months, and eventually was passable, and basically like kept with StarCraft until then, until eventually just going through like small UK events like Epic LAN and Insomnia, until eventually I was asked to cast Gfinity 3, which is where I met you.
I remember that.
Yeah, it was a fun StarCraft event, but by that was about the point, because I basically just did that along with some team management for different teams, different games, etc. And it was by that point in the game that I finally got to cast with like some of the top level people, and I was like, okay, I'm not feeling the game like I used to, and all these people are way better than me, and I've been doing this 3 years. I'm out. And I was like, okay, well, I don't know what I'm going to do. I'm probably going to like swap to casting Hearthstone, because that was out. I was enjoying that at the time. And it was about that time that BlizzCon was coming around, and I went to a Barcraft in London to watch the BlizzCon. And it was at that BlizzCon that Heroes of the Storm was announced.
So wait a second, you actually stopped after G3? I didn't even know that. Like, that was the first time that I saw you, and we had to talk already a little bit, and you said flat out, okay, I was really bad, but I never really knew that. After that, you said, okay, this is such a gap that I'm going to quit completely. So you literally searched for another game then to commentate?
I did. I didn't feel I was having as much passion for the game anymore, where I was enjoying Hearthstone a little bit more, and I was playing some MOBAs along the side. And I just realized that I wasn't enjoying it. I didn't have the analytical mindset that enough for StarCraft, so it just didn't really work, especially as the UK scene was very much full of play-by-play. There was a lot less analytical, so it was hard to fit into that very niche market in general. So yeah, I just started commentating Hearthstone, but eventually, and was playing MOBAs on the side, and eventually, like I said, Heroes was announced, and I was like, oh, it's a MOBA by Blizzard with Starcraft characters. I like Starcraft. And basically decided that would be a quite good idea. So I commentated Hearthstone and did some event hosting for like different game companies like Ubisoft, and did some event stuff for Blizzard, etc. before that with Hearthstone. And then eventually, due to the show, which I never got you on, Caster Challenges, which is what I did outside of casting, I got messaged by one of the community managers for Blizzard, and they gave me a technical alpha invite. And I was in the first wave, started playing, found a way to play replays, even though Blizzard doesn't want us to, and have been casting ever since.
I remember that, like the first games that we actually casted in Heroes of the Storm was all through that replay hack, and somehow through the launcher. Like I think it was dragging files on the launcher or something, and then you couldn't open the replay, and that's how the first tournaments actually took place, by people queuing up, or teams queuing up at the same time, ending up in the same game, and then making a tournament out of that.
Yeah, it was basically dragging the replay file originally, which was stored. There was just no replay system, so they said. But basically what you could do is you could drag it into the support folder and into the support 86 file, and that would load the replay. And it was a really janky UI because it wasn't ready, which is why Blizzard didn't want us to cast. And they said at BlizzCon, we really like all the esports stuff, even though we asked you not to, because you can't stop us. You can't stop passion for esports.
So after you then decided that Heroes is going to be your game, how did the journey continue, and what were your next steps to get to that point?
Well, my next steps were finding a co-caster, because I had quite the issue casting in the early days, because I was living in the countryside with my parents.
Before we get there, describe countryside, because I think we have to put that in perspective.
My neighbors were llamas. I literally lived across from like a agricultural college where we had like sheep, llamas. There was like an old, like the house next door used to be an old silversmith, and the people across from us held horses in their backyard because it was big enough. It's that kind of countryside. We had a small copse in the garden.
So the perfect environment to start a career as a caster, relying on video games and a stable internet connection.
Absolutely. As such, I had the optimum streaming speed of 0.3 megabits per second, which was not ideal, I'm going to be honest. I couldn't really stream any kind of video upload-wise. I could download fine. So basically what I was doing is I couldn't stream myself, obviously. So even in StarCraft, I was finding co-casters, and they were the ones who streamed, and I would just come in via comms and commentate with them. And it was as simple as that. So for Heroes, my first reaction was, I need help. And immediately I found some people. I found GXX Sharks, Hoss, who is someone I already knew from previous games, Technolink, all those people from like the original set, and started commentating the tournaments that came up there. And yeah, that's how it started. And then you came in and absolutely wrecked the scene, because we were all getting very happy with our like 100, 200 views, and then Khaldor comes in with his 4K, steals all the viewers away.
I'm not going to apologize for that.
You shouldn't. It was great for growing the scene, but it was a situation of just working up from there, just finding people to cast with and stuff like that. And I hadn't spoken to you at all, really, since Gfinity at the time. So was just casting with people every now and again. I get a message from one of the people I'm commentating with, and he says, hey, there's an event happening at these dates. Can you do it? It's like one of the first offline events for Heroes. Would you be interested? And my answer is, that's a very silly question. Yes. And then I get a message from you a couple weeks later saying, hey, are you free on these dates? And I was like, is it in this country? Is it in Bucharest, perchance? And the answer was yes. And apparently these people had attempted to reach out for Khaldor, and he doesn't read his emails.
Not true. I didn't get an email. I got a Facebook message, apparently, and I don't read my Facebook messages. So that's a little bit different. But there were several wires crossed, which is why the entire situation became a little bit more complicated.
It did indeed, but they basically finally got in touch with Khaldor and asked him to cast, and they asked you who you'd like to cast with. And for some reason, you said me.
I don't remember why, but I'm sure I had a good reason.
We had the conversation, and you were like, I looking at the people, you're the one I like the best. And that was the reply, which was a very muted compliment from you.
Sounds about right. So, with any new game, but also still to the day, I always stalk Twitch streams. So I'm always going to be found on the streams that have like 30 viewers when I see that someone commentates games and going to listen to a game or two. So that sounds like very much me just stalking and seeing, okay, who can I cast with when it comes to an event.
Yeah, so we did a DreamHack Bucharest, me and you together. It was really fun, very warm. I got my first experience of what it's like to be warm outside at night. From the UK, where it's very cold all the time, except this summer, where it's very, very warm. But yeah, cast with you for the first time there, and then messaged you sometime after I got back and was like, hey, would you be interested in casting online together? And once again, you had no possible reason other than just being a nice guy to say yes at all, because I couldn't stream myself. You did not need me at all. You were perfectly fine and happy solo casting, but you said yes. And because of that, I have a job right now.
You know I can't deal with compliments, so let's skip about the part and go to the next one.
What is the next one? I mean, we moved on to like other events from there. Was Berlin doing the Freaks for You stuff, which was WCA. Yeah, so that was my first experience like coming out to a studio. So did some fun stuff there. Was very interesting experience. Was a lovely studio. Very much enjoyed it there. Did not enjoy the Berlin heat. I do not deal with heat very well. But once again, it was the second event we'd done together. We were starting to hang out more. And this was when other people were starting to jump up as well. Like we had rival teams basically, where it was Colaris was starting to get into it a little bit more. The Americans were coming out to European events a little bit. With Solid Jake and people like that. So you had a little bit more we had a little bit more competition. And it was even to the point where I was going to DreamHacks with Todd. So I was actually starting to do these events and I was getting paid. And that was a reaction of, oh, okay. I mean, I will never forget the situation of when it was Gfinity, I was asked what I thought what I wanted to be paid. So basically what I thought I was worth, and I'd never had that question before. So I was like, £50 a day sounds reasonable. And they were like, yep. They were like, if that's what you want. And I was like, that sounds good to me. And then for DreamHack, they messaged me and it was a magnitude more than that. And I was like, wait, what? This is what people actually get paid?
I think shortly after that we had a talk about it.
We did, because you told me that I was very much underselling myself, and you've told me that repeatedly. But basically I was going to all of these events at that point and just doing all the independents, everything that was available, while ESL had like their guys doing their thing, did everything I could with you. And that was when it was more the Wild West, where like everyone possible was trying to hold an event.
So before we dive any deeper into like how Heroes evolved and how the casting also changed, when you started to go to events and also started to, let's say, cast a couple of more high-profile tournaments, what was the one, like, can you remember a couple of things where you say, okay, this is something you didn't expect from casting, or where there were any surprises where you went to an event and you said afterwards, okay, this is something that I didn't think would be either a problem or something that you had to deal with?
Forgetting that I'm not allowed to swear. I swore at Todd once for quoting Linkin Park lyrics in a cast. That's a thing that I completely forgot I wasn't allowed to do. Otherwise, it was just style, dress. I was wearing like a suit that was far too baggy. I mean, you still, to this day, rip into me for my shoes all the time, where I'm like, no one sees below the desk. I'm going to wear comfy shoes. And you're like, no, they must look good.
Thanks, the German accent sells it.
You're welcome. But yeah, like all of the, like everything, quite frankly, there's all these things like different styles with people, learning how to throw back and forth to people. Some, like all of this stuff is like stuff that I'm still working on. I'm still trying to get better, as every caster is. Everyone's trying to be the better caster, as they always try to be. But learning the throws, learning to work with different styles of people. I was casting with you, which was hybrid. I was casting with Todd, who was who was analysis at the time, meaning I had to be more play-by-play, which is an experience I still have today, where having to swap between styles is an interesting experience.
So when HGC came along, the entire casting scene, everything changed, and I think that impacted you also pretty heavily. So how was that time frame for you, and how did you experience that?
So I'd already been passed over for the European Championships as they had at that time, and for BlizzCons before, and I was still inexperienced. I was just putting it up to that. But when HGC came along, I'd done basically every event with you at that point. I'd done everything except for BlizzCon, and then HGC came along. And I hear rumors of they're actually just picking people to do everything. And that's it. And then I'm okay, so who's there from Europe? There's me, Khaldor, Kalaris. That at that time, that was the top 3. And I was okay, I might have a shot on this. And then I hear it's Trick, an American. And I was I did not know that was an option. And I also had not heard his casting before, so I was very unsure as to how it would be. I hadn't been able to experience it. Watched the show, was very impressed and enjoyed his casting, so there was no brainer on that. But it was also very bittersweet of, he's doing a good job. Khaldor, the one person who I was working with in Europe at this point, has left. He's going to Los Angeles. There is literally no one and nothing left. Blizzard has moved in and centralized everything, and I'm the only one left behind.
So, just to paint the scene here again, at this point it's still true that you are living somewhere where you can't stream by yourself, so you're heavily reliant on other people bringing you into the casts. Was there at any point a moment when you said, I have to move away from this, I can't actually do this as a job even though I enjoy it? Or did you always think, okay, what are options that I have to solve these problems?
All of those things. There was so many times where I was if I can find a place to move, I will. I was spending time at my at the time girlfriend's, who had a room I could stream out of, and I came for a week to do one tournament that Blizzard asked me to do, and ended up staying for 3 months because there was other casting I could do. Looking into stuff, was looking for satellite internet, was looking for bonded lines, looking how much it would cost to just put the fiber lines in. Turns out several tens of thousands, something I don't have on a caster salary, and everything came down to money. If I wasn't doing HGC anymore, I couldn't afford to move. I couldn't afford to do any of these things. There was nothing until Blizzard messaged me and eventually were are you interested in doing Open Division? And that was literally the one opportunity I've been left behind, there's nothing left, to, thank God, I can still keep doing what I love.
What happened then? So Open Division is all of a sudden coming in, but what did that mean for you? Did you do that from home? Did you eventually move? What was the next step, and when did you find yourself also in a position to go to offline events and establish yourself as one of the casters that is always at least in that circle that is chosen for these events?
So for Open Division, I was still doing it from home. I was doing that because Grubby was the one who streamed it, which was closely followed behind, about a couple months later by HGC China as well. So, which was also, once again, done online, with Kendrick being the one who streamed it. I was still living at home. I was still unable to stream. I was just silent. Just a JPEG of me. At one point, a GIF. Thanks, Grubby. And thanks, Kendrick, actually. He made a really creepy blinking GIF of me. It was weird. Funny, though. But it was a situation of just casting those, everything I could, just putting everything I could into casting as much as I could. The schedule wasn't too bad back then. It was 3 games a day of China, the usual schedule for Open Division, and that was fine. And then I got invited to, we'd already had Leicester's and ESL Leicester and stuff like that. And then it came round to the first Western Clash at Katowice. And that was a situation of, I don't know why I'm invited to this. I'm Open Division. There's no Chinese teams here. But I was very happy to be invited to it, and it was nice to be back with the European players who literally just a couple months earlier I had been casting. I cast the qualifiers with you. That's shortly before I found out that you were going out and I wasn't. But it was really nice to be back with the players, so that made me want to commit even more to hooray, I've done an offline event, I've got another payday, I can keep going even further. And I just kept going even further. and just committing as hard as I could. And that didn't work out as well as I'd hoped, because I got to mid-season brawl, and that was fantastic. That was great. I was able to like give the China knowledge that I just gathered the previous 6 months, and was able to just throw everything I could into casting. And then nothing. There were no more events for me for a year.
So, I mean, the next thing that happened was that BlizzCon comes along and you're not invited for BlizzCon.
There was the next Western and Eastern Clash, neither of which I was invited to, and then BlizzCon, which I was also not invited to.
BlizzCon in particular must have heard at that point, because there was also, I mean, you had, of course, some competition on that level for all of these offline events. We saw, for example, Skimmy emerge at the first event in Kiev at the Western Clash, and he then also got the invite straight to BlizzCon. So tell me a little bit about how that interaction with other casters that you met then at these events, and the competition that all of a sudden you had with them, fighting, so to say, for those offline events.
I mean, there's always a situation that every caster you ever meet, if you are in this kind of job, can take your spot. I mean, the fact is, any situation, you could take my spot at any of these any event that I am invited to. It's just how it is with casting. I think if everyone saw every other caster as only competition, then we'd never get anything done. The fact is, we all help each other so much because we like each other and want to see each other succeed, that it is very much more of a family than it is of a rivalry. But you are still looking at it of just like, where'd this guy come from? I was doing this. But then you see them work and you're like, okay, yeah, fair enough. Like you mentioned Skimmy, for example. He came out of nowhere and I was like, who is this guy? And watched him cast, and I was like, for his first event, he did a really good job.
Skimmy is also the one that then makes it to BlizzCon, and I think from your perspective that must actually have hurt, since, as you said, he comes out of nowhere, he goes to the Western Clash, he does a good job at his first event, but there's definitely at that point still weaknesses in the way that he approached the event, which are absolutely natural given it is the first event that he has, especially on the international level. But then with the experience that you already have from, I think at this point it's 2.5 years of casting Heroes of the Storm, doing the open division, being at several events, I would expect that from your end there were certain expectations towards BlizzCon, especially that in the previous year you already didn't go, and then you don't get the invite and you just see that Skimmy goes. What was that feeling like for you, and how did you handle that situation?
I mean, it was, once again, it was less so much helplessness, but I was also not being told if I had open division next year again, so it was very much being left in the dark. And it was a situation of, am I being left behind again? Is this a situation where they now have a team and they're just going to keep going without me? And it's the return to that feeling. It was a situation of I was never going to stop unless Blizzard just shut me out of everything, which it was clear in hindsight they had no intention of doing. It was just they have business to do. They have to sort all this out before they can come to me and go, hey, you're doing this thing. But it is a situation of you get a little bit nervous when you don't have that information flowing.
Was there ever a moment when you actually thought about just quitting Heroes and going to a different game? Because for me personally, especially when 2016 happens, and at that point I casted basically every single event that happened, but then not getting the invite to BlizzCon because of, let's call it, difference in opinion that I had back then with Blizzard. That was such a blow that for a long time I was talking to family and thinking about, okay, do I really want to pursue this? And there were some serious moments where I said, okay, I'm just going to quit this completely and I'm going to switch over to a different company, switch over to a different game because I don't know if this is going anywhere, and made then in the end the decision to stay with it just because I loved the game. But the thoughts at that point in time were definitely there. Did that never cross your mind that maybe you have a better chance in a different game when you felt left out? Or was it always that you just simply said, okay, listen, even if this is the game that I enjoy, so I'm going to stick with it no matter what happens here?
I had a slight thought of maybe picking up a second game, but I never thought of quitting Heroes. I was enjoying the game itself too much, and it was a situation of if I'm enjoying the game and can make something of that, then at least I'm doing something. Even if I get a full-time job alongside it, if Blizzard cut me out of casting, I would have still played at the time on my YouTube, which at the time I was enjoying very much and actually knew what I was doing with my content. Less so much nowadays with my YouTube. No idea what's going on over there. Currently nothing. But no, I never wanted to quit Heroes. It was too fun for me.
So where you are right now, you're still, I mean, currently, obviously, you went from the Western Clash to the Eastern Clash, but have you found stability in that line of work that you can rely on a bit more? Because I would assume that this is still a bit of a problem to see, okay, how long can I do this? How is stability looking like in the long run? Can I move somewhere? Do I have the regular income to pay rent and to provide a certain standard of living? Where are you at this point? Do you still live at home? How stable is the income that you have right now and the opportunities that you get, and has the situation that you described earlier changed in any way?
Well, Blizzard changed their requirements after the first year of Open Division in China, and they were like, for the online cups, it needs to look better, so therefore webcam is required. I got that message at a very inconvenient time, Christmas Eve, but I got that information, and I was still living at home, and I was like, welp, I'm in trouble. This is rough. And at the time, my brother's girlfriend said that her family had an outer building. I don't know what it was called. An annex is the word that comes to mind, but I don't know if that's correct. But it was basically a fully enclosed, almost self-home. And was like, you can rent that. And I was like, does it have internet, please? And it had internet. And it had good internet. So I spoke to her parents, and they let me move in there for a while until eventually they wanted to sell the place, and I moved out and moved again. But the fact is, thanks to doing both China and European Open Division, I pay rent. I get by. I can buy food. I can pay for the place that I live.
Being able to buy for food is always very convenient. That's always a plus in my book.
I've heard. It's usually a preference, I find. When we have a list of things that people would prefer, I find food is quite high up on there.
So, where do you stand now with, back then you made the decision that, okay, you want to become a caster, and you certainly made it to that point, and you say, okay, now at least your life is a little more stable, more regulated. But in the long run, let's move away even maybe from Heroes here for a second. Do you feel like with the experience that you gathered in this business so far, there's always going to be a place where you can establish yourself as a caster in a game that you like? Or do you feel that it's likely that at some point you are going to try and make a transition either into a completely different field or maybe into a different role within esports? Since obviously you have now also experience on the production side a lot more, so there's more options that you have. So how much did that help you to establish yourself within that scene? And what kind of opportunity would you personally like to pursue in the long run?
I still feel the same amount of passion about casting as I always do. I want to keep doing Heroes as long as it is feasible, as long as it allows me to pay rent. But eventually, I guess maybe moving on to another game in the future, as I still feel incredibly passionate about casting and want to continue it. I also wouldn't mind just continuing with the part-time hobbies I'm doing. Using the voice work and the techniques I picked up from casting, learning a lot about the breath control and about just what my own voice is capable of. I've picked up voice acting as a thing to do along the side, and that's been an absolute blast, learning the limits of my capabilities, just starting with impressions and working up from there. It's fun, and right now my life allows me to just do what I find to be fun and get paid for it. I hope I never have to stop that.
Let's talk a bit about that voice acting, because I know that you've been doing it, but I never really knew if that was something that you already did before Heroes, if you picked that up later, how much of an impact that has on your life right now, because you always said, okay, that you have a couple of paid jobs within voice acting, that you have a couple of projects on the same side, but what does it actually mean? What do you do? What is voice acting, and how much do you do in that direction?
It's mostly just a hobby at this point. I would love to make it more of a thing in general. But right now I just use the website Casting Call Club, and I literally just scroll through auditions until I find stuff I like and apply. It's as simple as that, and I just work out what my voice is capable of with what I'm flexible doing. Sometimes I'll see a big angry orc and go, yeah, absolutely can do that one. Then I'll see Mad Wizard and alright, it's a little bit higher pitched, I can try and work with that one. But it is just a situation of I picked it up because I thought it would be fun. And also was a little bit inspired by the amazing people on Critical Role, with the amount of talent that they show, and decided that this would be a very good idea, and I've been enjoying it very much.
We're talking about voice acting, and I think it helps you a bit, probably also with the technical side of a cast. Can you name something within casting that for you has been a struggle, or where you feel this is something that you personally felt very difficult to incorporate into your cast, or maybe some kind of hurdle that you had to overcome to improve your casting, where I felt, okay, this is something that I need to address, but I still have a weakness?
Pacing, I think, is definitely a thing. I think that's something I'm still working on right now. Also, the usage of THs and Fs, something that I've had an issue with since I was a child. I always used to just replace every TH with an F in every sentence, so I would think, not think, and would do that in basically every single word, and that was noticeable in a cast. So I've worked on that a fair amount more, and I'm better now, but not perfect. But that's like a from childhood habit to unlearn.
I think for everyone else, that's just the UK accent, and you're usually okay with that. I noticed that with you, and I mean, it's actually funny because when we casted in Berlin like years ago, I noticed that a little bit in the way that you were casting. I was like, look at that, that's that British accent. Maybe I should pick that up at some point.
No, it's a bad habit. Definitely should not do that. But other than that, just pacing, learning when to slow down. Because I talked very fast, and yeah, it's great to have the oh my god, rap god moments in a cast, which I also got quite a bit better at due to just learning what my voice could do and what I was capable of in casting with you, where pace was very fast a lot of the time, but knowing when to slow down, knowing when the moment is right to bring out the hype, bring out the gruff voice of hype.
So when we're talking about like becoming a caster, if there's someone out there that watches this video and says, okay, this is actually something that I would love to do as well, what do you feel do new casters have to do in order to, first of all, get noticed? Is there something where it's always like a bit of a meme when it comes to players, but also to casters, that it's an old boys club. So if you're not one of the names and one of the boys, you have no chance of breaking through there. Is that something that you perceive to be true? And if not, I mean, even if, what do you feel is the best way to get noticed as a caster? What are the first steps that someone should take to get noticed within the scenes? And just from your personal experience, what's necessary to really at least get a shot at this?
It's an awesome question, because the answer is it's difficult. It is very difficult to get into casting. It's a fantastic job that lots of people want. And the fact is, there is always going to be a bit of preference amongst other casters to work with people they've worked with before. It's not so much an old boys club, but there's always going to be that preference. But the situation is, I would say just do casting for starters. Try and make friends, try and make contacts, but don't be pushy. Don't be a me. Don't go up to like the top caster in the scene at the time and go, hey, we should cast. And just do that, because it's not going to work most of the time. Do casting on your own. I was lucky in the fact that I had already done this. Do casting on your own. Build up a portfolio. You don't have to make it yourself. Just find some casts of your own that you like, and if you want to cast with someone, ask them if they'd be interested in having a co-caster. And if they ask, you have something to show them, and work from there. But it's a situation of I would hope that if you think and you work hard enough, you think you are good enough, then maybe you can get it. Because the situation is, I hope that the majority of other casters will pick people up purely on merit. Because I think that's all that matters in casting in terms of what I'd like to get picked up for. I would only like to get a job on merit and nothing more. I don't want it to be because I know someone. I don't want it to be because I'm friends with the producer's friend's son, etc., or whatever it is, just because I'm good enough.
When it comes to heroes casting and talking about good enough, you talked a little bit about weaknesses that you've overcome as well. And earlier when we started, you also alluded a bit to the different roles that you can play within a caster. And I think it applies to starting as a caster too. Which role do you play there? We talk about analysis, hybrid casting, going into the play-by-play. Where do you think these days you stand? Do you feel you have found a certain role that you personally identify with within the casting scene, or is that still something where you feel, okay, I have a weakness there and or a strength here, and I need to adapt to whoever I cast with? Or can you do that even?
I think I can adapt to whoever I cast with, but I also think it would be foolish to say that I'm not stronger in play-by-play than I am with analysis. But that depends on the region. When I came to the Western Clash, it's very clear that people like you, Gilly, all the Jhow, all the people who've done the research have that analysis advantage over me. But when we came here, Second to China game came up because I cast it every single day. I'm like, hang on, I'm going to put this down here. Right, boys, let's get going. It's a situation of experience. Like, there's only so much you can learn from watching watching back someone else casting compared to casting yourself. I feel I'm still pretty decent at analysis these days. I'm much better than I used to be, so I think I'm flexible enough to cast with anyone these days. I'd like to hope so, at least.
So you've come a pretty long way as a caster. You attended a lot of these events, but when you would look forward to, we talked a bit about like the extended future, what maybe in the long term could be plans for you. But let's talk about casting goals in the short term, within the time frame of, let's say, a year or two. What would be something that you personally want to achieve as a caster?
I mean, the only goal left is BlizzCon. That's all that's left in Heroes of the Storm. I've done every event now. This is my first Eastern Clash, right here, right now. Just finished it. It was pretty dope. But literally, I've now done a Western Clash. I've done Crucibles. I've done an HGC China. It may not be in a studio, but it's me. I've done an Open Division. I've done Mid-Season Brawl. The only thing I haven't done is BlizzCon. So within the next year, maybe next couple months, I can hope. I have no idea. I've not been told anything yet, but I can only hope.
All right, Tetcher, I hope that it works out this year for you with BlizzCon and not next year. It was always a pleasure casting with you and also following the journey of you throughout Heroes of the Storm, and I hope that it doesn't stop with that game. That being said, we are going to probably go to bed pretty soon because at least I'm pretty knackered from the event. Thanks again for the interview and all the best for the future.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me. We apologize for the lack of coffee. Hi everyone, Tetcher again here, just me this time, as I wanted to dive back into the topic I had of being picked for or not picked for events based on merit compared to other things, because it's a topic I feel very strongly about because it is quite a personal one. I wanted to frame it in what I felt was a more strong light as to how I actually feel about it. I myself am bi or pansexual, depending on what definition you want to go by. I don't really understand sexuality well enough to break those two down for you. Google is your friend, I'm afraid. But the situation is I like basically everyone. So, hooray for me. But it's a situation of I would never want that as an example, because this is a personal topic to me, to be used to give me a higher chance to be picked for an event. Like, I wouldn't want to be picked just because of that, of the fact that I am bi or pansexual. Just like, and just as more importantly, that I am not picked for an event because of those reasons. I would never want that to happen, and I would hope that never happens to anyone else in a situation like that, whether it's via gender, sexuality, race, anything like that. Anything where someone is not being picked based on purely their own skill and merit. This is why I feel a little bit more strongly to that point, because like I said, it's a bit more personal and something I truly believe in, which is why I was here alone for you, ladies and gentlemen. But, that being said, thank you all very much for watching. Thank you for hearing me out on this very short little ramble. If you enjoy this show, then be sure to watch more Coffee with Khaldor or listen to it on SoundCloud. Khaldor's off the side of the camera. And thank you all very much for watching. Be sure to love each other. Laters.